Welcome back to My Mind MashUps for another deep dive. We've got a really interesting set of materials you sent over this time, all focused on this tiny little gland deep inside your brain.
Yes, it's fascinating, isn't it? Revered by ancient cultures, still being explored by modern science.
Exactly, and it raises so many questions, like what is the pineal gland, biologically speaking? What does it actually do? And why did so many ancient civilizations, all over the world, seem to think it was so spiritually important, calling it a third eye or the seat of the soul?
Right, that connection is key.
Then there are these ideas, these beliefs that maybe it's being blocked or suppressed somehow. What's behind that?
We'll definitely get into the basis for those theories.
And what about the link some people see with dreaming or even near-death experiences?
Another intriguing area, yeah. The DMT connection often comes up there.
And finally, what are people actually doing? These practices to, like, awaken or detoxify this third eye.
Lots to unpack there, too. Some traditional, some more modern approaches.
Okay, so today we're diving into all of it, the science, the history, the theories surrounding the pineal gland. We'll lay out the facts and the beliefs from the sources you shared so you can form your own perspective.
Sounds good. Let's start with the basics.
Perfect. So, biologically, let's pin this down. Where exactly is the pineal gland and, what's it made of?
Okay, so biologically, it's a small gland, kind of pine cone shaped, hence the name. It sits pretty much right in the center of your brain, deep inside between the two hemispheres.
Okay, center of the brain, how small are we talking?
Tiny. About 0.8 centimeters long, and it weighs only around 0.1 grams in an adult. It's nestled near other important structures, like the thalamic bodies and the third ventricle. And interestingly, it's bathed in cerebrospinal fluid.
Ah, the CSF, so it's right in that fluid environment.
Exactly, which acts like the brain's shock absorber and transport system.
And what about its structure? What kind of cells are in there?
Well, it's mainly made up of two cell types. About 95% are these specialized cells called pinealocytes. They're the workhorses, the ones actually making the melatonin.
Okay, pinealocytes. And the other 5%?
Those are glial cells. Think of them as the support crew, providing structure and essential backup for the pinealocytes.
Oh, and it's highly vascularized. Gets a lot of blood flow via the posterior cerebral artery.
Right, which makes sense if it's releasing hormones into the bloodstream.
Precisely. It needs good supply lines in and out.
So, melatonin, that's the hormone everyone associates with the pineal gland. What's its main job, and how does the gland actually make it?
Melatonin's primary role, the one we know most about, is regulating our sleep-wake cycles, our circadian rhythms.
Right, keeping us on that daily schedule.
Exactly. And the production process is, well, it's quite clever. At night, nerve signals trigger the release of norepinephrine in the gland. This chemical messenger basically flips a switch inside the pinealocytes. It starts a specific enzymatic pathway that converts serotonin, another well-known chemical, into melatonin. Serotonin into melatonin, okay, and what turns it off?
Light. That's the crucial part. When light hits your eyes, signals travel to a part of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCNN. It's like the body's master clock.
The SCN. Got it.
And the SCN tells the pineal gland, okay, it's daytime, stop making melatonin. So your melatonin levels naturally spike at night and drop during the day.
Makes sense. Now let's wind down for sleep. Now, something else mentioned in the material was brain sand. Sounds a bit odd. What is that?
Yeah, brain sand. It sounds dramatic, doesn't it? It refers to calcium deposits that can form within the pineal gland. The scientific term is corpora arenacea.
Calcium deposits, like hardening.
Sort of. They're composed of calcium and magnesium salts. And interestingly, they can start appearing even in childhood, and they definitely increase as we get older. In fact, the pineal gland calcifies more readily than almost any other part of the body.
Wow, so is that bad? Should we be worried about this sand?
That's the million-dollar question, really. The implications are still debated. Some research suggests it's just a natural part of aging, maybe not causing significant issues. Others linked higher levels of calcification to potentially impaired melatonin production, and maybe even connect it to things like sleep disorders, migraines, or possibly neurodegenerative diseases. But the direct cause and effect isn't fully established.
So it could be a factor, but it might just be normal aging for many people. What causes it or contributes to it?
Well, aging itself seems to be the biggest factor. Metabolic activity within the gland probably plays a role too. Certain chronic conditions might contribute. And then there are environmental factors that get discussed, things like maybe living at lower altitudes, getting less sunlight, potentially EMF exposure.
EMFs,
Yeah.
like from phones and stuff.
That's one area being looked at, yes. And significantly, fluoride intake is often mentioned as a potential contributor.
Okay, fluoride again. We definitely need to circle back to that. Yeah. Before we do, any other unique things about the pineal gland we should know?
Yes, a couple of really key things. One is its location outside the blood-brain barrier.
Outside, that seems unusual for brain tissue.
It is. The blood-brain barrier is usually very selective about what gets from the blood into the brain, but the pineal gland sits outside this barrier. This means it can directly interact with hormones and other substances in the bloodstream, and it receives a huge amount of blood flow, second only to the kidneys, proportionally.
Wow. So it's really connected to the rest of the body's systems.
Absolutely. Also, it starts developing very early in gestation during pregnancy. And beyond melatonin, researchers are exploring other potential functions, maybe influencing bone metabolism, mental health, like with seasonal affective disorder, possibly how we metabolize certain drugs, and even aspects of aging.
So it's small, but potentially involved in a lot more than just sleep.
Definitely seems that way. It's a complex little structure.
Okay, so that's the biology. Now let's shift gears. Why this deep reverence in ancient cultures? This third eye idea. Where does that come from?
Right, the symbolism and spiritual significance are just as fascinating as the biology. The third eye concept is probably the most well-known.
Let's start east. Hinduism, yoga. The third eye seems pretty central there.
Spot on. In Hindu traditions, you have the concept of the Ajna chakra. It's considered the sixth primary energy center, located right between the eyebrows.
The Ajna chakra. I've heard of that.
It's often depicted as a lotus, and it's strongly associated with intuition, wisdom, spiritual insight, seeing beyond the physical. Ancient texts call it the eye of wisdom. Practices like dhyana or meditation are aimed at activating this center to perceive subtle realities.
And the link to the pineal gland.
Well, many practitioners and scholars see the pineal gland as the physical counterpart to the Ajna chakra. The reasoning points to its central location in the brain, its known sensitivity to light, and its role in producing melatonin, which governs cycles often linked to meditative states.
So the idea is that meditation or chanting could actually stimulate this gland.
That's the belief in those traditions, yes. That activating ajna, potentially via the pineal gland, enhances intuition and spiritual vision.
Interesting. Oh, what about ancient Egypt? You mentioned the Eye of Horus earlier.
Yes, the Eye of Horus, or Wedget, a hugely important symbol in ancient Egypt: protection, royal power, divine insight. What's really striking is when you overlay the Eye of Horus symbol onto a cross-section of the human brain.
How so?
The different parts of the eye symbol seem to line up remarkably well with key structures in the midbrain, including the pineal gland, the thalamus, the pituitary.
Seriously? Like anatomically?
The parallels are quite strong visually. Given that we know the Egyptians had sophisticated anatomical knowledge from their medical papyri, some researchers argue this resemblance couldn't be just coincidence. They might have intentionally encoded this knowledge.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing if true.
There are even interpretations of texts like the Book of the Dead that suggest references to the pineal as an eye of the mind, a way for the soul to connect with the divine. And they use substances like the sacred blue lotus in rituals, believed to stimulate the pineal. Modern analysis shows compounds in blue lotus could potentially affect melatonin pathways.
Amazing. The symbolism runs deep. Okay, moving towards Western traditions. The all-seeing eye. We see that everywhere, like on the US dollar bill.
Exactly. The Eye of Providence, often in a triangle, rays of light. It emerged in Renaissance Europe, symbolizing God's omniscience. It was adopted by Freemasonry and, yes, ended up on the Great Seal of the United States.
But how does it connect to the pineal gland?
Well, in more esoteric traditions that branched off or ran parallel, think Rosicrucianism, Theosophy, this symbol got reinterpreted. They saw the all-seeing eye not just as God's eye out there, but as an inner eye, the pineal gland capable of perceiving spiritual truths hidden from ordinary sight.
Ah, so an internal interpretation.
Precisely. And remember, René Descartes, the famous philosopher, he wasn't strictly esoteric, but he famously called the pineal gland the principal seat of the soul, the point where mind and body interact.
Right. I think, therefore I am.
That's him. Some even speculate the triangle around the eye symbolizes the pinecone shape of the gland, and the light rays represent its connection to light-dark cycles via melatonin. And the Freemasonic idea of enlightenment could be seen as having this double meaning intellectual awakening, but also maybe this inner pineal awakening.
It's incredible how this one tiny gland keeps popping up across cultures and time periods associated with sight, soul, wisdom.
It really is, and there are more examples. In Taoism, you have the upper dantian, often linked to the third eye area, and the pineal seen as crucial for spiritual alchemy.
Okay.
In Buddhism, the urna, that dot or jewel on the Buddha's forehead, symbolizes the illumination of the third eye, representing wisdom.
Right. I've seen that on statues.
Even in indigenous shamanic practices, like those involving ayahuasca, people often report visions of spiritual eyes. Some researchers theorize this could relate to pineal activity, perhaps linked to DMT, which is found in ayahuasca.
DMT again. We'll get to that.
And Western esoteric figures like Helena Blavatsky explicitly called the pineal the eye of Shiva, linking it to psychic abilities like astral projection. Some modern magical traditions, like Thelema, have practices aimed at opening the third eye.
So given all this historical weight and focus, it kind of leads into the next section, doesn't it? This idea that maybe something is interfering with it now, the blocking theory.
Exactly. If this gland was historically seen as so important for insight or connection, it's almost natural to ask if something in modern life might be hindering it.
And this usually comes back to calcification, right? The brain sand we talked about.
Yes. The core of the blocking theory is often that modern environmental factors are causing excessive calcification, impairing the gland's function, potentially its melatonin production. And according to these theories, maybe it's more subtle spiritual functions too.
Okay, so what are the main culprits cited in this theory? You mentioned fluoride earlier.
Fluoride is definitely front and center in these discussions. Research has shown that the pineal gland can accumulate fluoride, sometimes at much higher concentrations than other brain tissues.
Accumulate it? How?
The mechanism isn't perfectly clear, but fluoride ions are small and can potentially cross barriers more easily. Some studies, like one from 2001 often cited, found fluoride deposits in calcified pineal tissue and suggested a correlation with lower melatonin levels in those samples. The argument from critics is that fluoride binds readily with calcium, and this might accelerate the formation of those corpora arenacea, the calcium deposits.
Which leads directly into the controversy around water fluoridation.
Absolutely. That's where it becomes a major public health debate.
What are the sides saying?
Well, critics of fluoridation point to studies like the ones mentioning pineal accumulation and potential melatonin effects. They raise concerns about systemic exposure, potential neurodevelopmental risks suggested by some other studies, especially prenatal exposure, and argue for individual choice over mass medication. Some conspiracy theories even posit that fluoridation is a deliberate attempt to dumb down the population or suppress spiritual awareness by calcifying the pineal.
Okay, that's the critical view. What about the proponents?
Proponents, including major public health bodies like the CDC and WHO, emphasize that decades of research support water fluoridation at recommended levels as safe and highly effective in preventing dental caries, especially in children. They often state that reviews of the scientific literature haven't established a clear causal link between typical fluoride exposure from water and adverse pineal gland effects or other claimed systemic health issues. They point to the dental benefits outweighing the debated risks. A 2023 review, for instance, found no causal link to pineal dysfunction.
So a real division in interpretation of the science and the priorities. Fluoride is one major factor discussed. What else gets brought up in the blocking conversation?
Other potential contributors are often mentioned. Things like aluminum, sometimes linked with glyphosate exposure. A 2015 study hypothesized glyphosate might increase aluminum absorption, which could then interfere with melatonin pathways.
Aluminum, like from cookware or antiperspirants.
Sources can be varied, yes. Also, heavy metals like lead and cadmium, maybe from industrial pollution, are thought to cause oxidative stress in the pineal cells, which might promote calcium deposition. Dietary factors sometimes come up too, like diets very high in phosphates, perhaps from processed foods, or deficiencies in things like vitamin K2, which helps regulate calcium placement in the body.
And lifestyle factors.
Right. Besides the natural increase with age, things like chronic exposure to artificial light, disrupting the natural light-dark cycle, are considered. And as we touched on, electromagnetic fields, EMFs, a 2023 meta-analysis suggested a possible link between cell phone use and higher calcification rates, maybe via oxidative stress.
It's a complex picture with many potential influences, many still debated.
Definitely. It's rarely presented as just one single cause.
Okay, let's shift now to that psychedelic connection. DMT keeps coming up. What's the specific theory linking DMT synthesis to the pineal gland?
The theory, popularized by researchers like Dr. Rick Strassman, proposes that the pineal gland might be capable of synthesizing and releasing N,N-dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, a potent, naturally occurring psychedelic compound.
And the evidence for this?
Well, we know the pineal gland possesses the necessary enzymes, particularly INMT, which can convert tryptamine into DMT. Animal studies have detected DMT in the pineal glands of rodents and primates. In humans, trace amounts of DMT have been found in bodily fluids like cerebrospinal fluid and urine.
Trace amount, so not necessarily enough to cause psychedelic effects.
Generally, the levels detected so far are considered subpsychoactive. And importantly, a 2019 study found DMT in the rat visual cortex even after the pineal gland was removed. This suggests DMT might be produced elsewhere in the brain or body too, not exclusively in the pineal. Ah, okay, so the pineal might not be the only source, even if it is a source.
Exactly. That complicates the picture.
So how does this potential DMT link connect to altered states like dreaming or NDEs?
The idea with dreaming stems from DMT's effects on brain waves, which can resemble REM sleep patterns, suppressing alpha waves, enhancing theta and delta. Participants given DMT often report vivid, immersive, dreamlike experiences. The waking dream hypothesis suggests maybe tiny releases of endogenous DMT during REM sleep contribute to the visual richness and emotional intensity of our dreams. But again, actually measuring DMT release in a sleeping human brain is incredibly difficult, so it's still largely theoretical.
And near-death experiences.
Here, the connection is drawn from the similarities in reported experiences. NDEs often involve feelings of leaving the body, encountering entities or beings of light, intense emotions, life reviews, things that overlap significantly with descriptions of high-dose DMT trips. A 2018 study even found that DMT administration could induce experiences that scored very similarly on NDE questionnaires compared to people who had actually had an NDE. So the subjective experiences can be very similar.
Very similar. The theory posits that perhaps under extreme stress, like cardiac arrest, the brain might release a flood of DMT, generating the NDE phenomena.
But are there criticisms of this DMT-NDE link?
Oh yes, definitely. Critics like pharmacologist David E. Nichols point out major hurdles. For one, the sheer quantity of DMT needed for a full-blown psychedelic experience seems unlikely to be produced by the tiny pineal gland, given its known capacity for producing melatonin.
Right, the scale seems off.
There are also enzymatic barriers. An enzyme called MAO rapidly breaks down DMT in the body, so it would need to be produced very quickly and in large amounts to reach psychoactive levels. Plus, some aspects of NDEs, like reports of verified perceptions from outside the body during clinical death or the long-lasting transformative effects NDEs often have, aren't easily explained by a temporary drug effect alone. Yeah. Alternative biological explanations for NDEs involving other neurochemicals or brain states like hypoxia also exist.
So the DMT connection, while intriguing, is far from proven, especially as the sole explanation for dreams or NDEs.
Exactly. It's a compelling hypothesis, but significant questions and challenges remain. Trace amounts might play a modulatory role, but pineal production of psychoactive levels in humans is still speculative. More research, especially direct measurement in humans, is needed.
Makes sense. Okay, so given all this, the biology, the history, the concerns about blocking, the DMT theories, it's no surprise people are interested in, well, keeping their pineal gland healthy or even awakening it. What kinds of things do people try?
Right. This leads us to the whole area of pineal activation or detoxification. The approaches people explore generally fall into a few categories: diet, supplements, and various spiritual or lifestyle practices.
Let's break those down. What about dietary changes?
A big focus, stemming from the blocking theories, is often on reducing fluoride intake.
So filtered water, fluoride-free toothpaste, that kind of thing.
Exactly. That's a common recommendation in these circles, based on the animal studies linking fluoride decalcification. Of course, mainstream dental advice still strongly supports fluoride for preventing cavities. Other dietary advice often includes eating antioxidant-rich foods, things like raw cacao, garlic, leafy greens, the idea being to combat oxidative stress, which might contribute to calcification.
So generally healthy foods.
Yes. Also, sometimes things like chlorella or spirulina are suggested, supposedly to help chelate or remove heavy metals, though direct evidence for a pineal effect is limited. Processed foods high in phosphates are usually discouraged. And sometimes specific minerals are highlighted iodine because it might compete with fluoride for uptake, and boron, which might help with calcium metabolism. But again, human trials specifically targeting the pineal with these are generally lacking.
Okay, diet is one angle. What about supplements?
Several supplements supplements come up frequently. Vitamin K2 is one that's known to help direct calcium into bones rather than arteries or soft tissues. The thinking, largely speculative for the pineal, is that it might help prevent calcium depositing there.
K2 for calcium direction. Interesting. What else?
Magnesium is important as it's a cofactor needed for enzymes involved in melatonin synthesis. So ensuring adequate magnesium intake is often recommended. And of course, melatonin itself as a supplement. The idea here might be to compensate if the gland's own production is thought to be reduced due to calcification or age, but the long-term effects of supplementing melatonin aren't fully understood.
Right. So diet, supplements. What about the more spiritual or traditional practices?
This is where you get into things directly targeting that third eye concept. Focused meditation, specifically concentrating on the Ajna chakra area between the eyebrows, is a core practice in many traditions. Some studies, like one in 2021, have shown meditation can increase certain brainwaves, like theta waves, which are sometimes associated with relaxed, intuitive states, but linking this directly to pineal stimulation is a leap.
So meditation for focus and maybe altering brain states.
Yes. Ayurvedic traditions also have various detoxification or purification practices, like panchakarma, that are believed to benefit overall well-being, potentially including pineal function, though clinical validation for that specific effect is often limited.
What about things like sun gazing? I've heard of that.
Sun gazing is sometimes promoted, the idea being that direct sunlight exposure, especially at sunrise or sunset, stimulates the pineal via the eyes to regulate melatonin. However, and this is crucial, ophthalmologists strongly warn against this. Staring directly at the sun, even at low angles, carries a serious risk of permanent retinal damage, known as phototoxic retinopathy. It's definitely not recommended.
Okay, a major warning there. What about sound or crystals?
Yeah, you hear about those too. Sound therapy, using binaural beats or specific frequencies, is sometimes claimed to resonate with or vibrate the pineal gland. There's no real scientific evidence to support this specific claim. And crystal healing practices might involve placing crystals like amethyst or lapis lazuli on the forehead during meditation, believing their energy can activate the third eye. This is firmly in the realm of metaphysical belief systems, not science.
So a real spectrum of practices, from dietary tweaks to meditation to things with less or no scientific backing. Any final cautions or myths to bust here?
I think a key point is that the term decalcify is probably misleading. There's no proven, reliable way to reverse existing calcification in the pineal gland. Much of it might be normal aging and asymptomatic anyway. The focus should likely be more on preventing excessive calcification through healthy lifestyle choices, managing fluoride exposure reasonably, optimizing nutrient intake, maintaining healthy circadian rhythms through good sleep hygiene and light exposure, rather than chasing unproven cures.
And avoiding potentially harmful practices.
Absolutely, like the sun gazing risk we mentioned. Also, extreme avoidance of all fluoride could negatively impact dental health, and taking very high doses of certain supplements like iodine or boron without medical guidance can cause other problems like thyroid or kidney issues.
So balance and caution seem key. Focus on overall health rather than just targeting the pineal specifically with unproven methods.
That seems like a sensible approach, yes. Integrating potentially beneficial traditional practices like meditation with sound medical advice and a healthy lifestyle.
This has been incredibly thorough. We've covered the biology, the rich history, the concerns about modern life, the psychedelic links, the attempts to awaken it. It really leaves you thinking, doesn't it?
It really does. That central question remains.
Is this third eye a literal lens waiting to be opened, or is it more of a powerful symbol for a type of awareness and intuition that resides within us?
Yeah, a symbol for awakening, perhaps a deeper perception, whether you see that as purely psychological or something more.
It's fascinating how the scientific story and the ancient wisdom keep kind of circling around each other with this gland. They don't always agree, but they're both focused on this same tiny spot.
It highlights that tension, doesn't it, between measurable biology and subjective experience or spiritual belief. And maybe the ultimate key, if there is one, isn't just about external factors like fluoride or supplements, but about our internal state, our awareness, our choices, how we cultivate our own perception and understanding.
That's a really powerful thought to end on. It brings the focus back to you, the individual choosing how to perceive and understand. Thank you so much for walking us through all of this complex information. It's been truly enlightening.
My pleasure. It's an endlessly fascinating topic.
And a huge thank you to you, our listeners, for joining us on this deep dive, exploring the pineal gland through the sources you shared with us. If you found this exploration valuable, please do like, share, and subscribe or follow Mi Mind MashUps.
It helps others find the show and ensures you won't miss our future deep dives. You can find My Mind MashUps on Amazon Music, Audible, Facebook, Pocket Casts, Spotify, and YouTube. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those minds open.